while now, but I've known him more as the person that helps with the school boards and a lawyer that does a lot of pro bono work for the Vicariate. But recently, we were having a conversation about something completely different, and we started talking about stories of faith. And 2 hours later, I knew a lot more about Ziad. So his story touched my heart so much that I asked this extraordinarily busy man, not only as a lawyer, but as a family person too, I asked him to come and share his story with you today. So here is Mr. Ziad Saloum.
Hi everybody, I'm going to climb up, as you can see, and there's going to be, in a moment, not quite now. So I'm not here to talk to you about law. If you like, I could, but maybe not. First off, I want to say I'm really grateful and very honored to be here today. I can't tell you the feeling standing up here in front of you. I must say deepest thanks to Bishop Paul first for everything he's done for us, for me, for my family, for everybody here in the UAE and in the Vicariate that he covers. And Kate, thank you, and Joe for everything you're doing and for inviting me up here as well. Thank you to the organizers. It's really exciting to be here. Like Kate said, I'm a lawyer, but I don't want to just be defined by what we do. We always say that. You know, hey, well, the first thing you say when you meet somebody is, hey, what do you do? So what are you? I'm a lawyer, this and that. I'm more importantly than being a lawyer, I'm a husband. I have a wife that I don't think I deserve, and she's given me 3 extraordinary kids, and the 4 of them are the light of my life. And today, though, I'm going to be a storyteller. I'm going to tell you a bit about my story on the Camino, Camino de Santiago, and my journey of, well, my faith, and how I returned to the church after, let's say, a somewhat lengthy absence. Can I trouble you to start? So you're going to see some images pop by. In a former life, I was also a photographer, so every image up there is a picture I've taken. And so the pictures will cycle as I tell you the small story here. So first off, if you don't know what the Camino de Santiago is, I'll give you a tiny primer. So it's one of the 3 main pilgrimages in Christianity, the others being to Jerusalem and to the Vatican. And it's essentially a network of very well-established paths that start in almost every city and town in Europe, and then they congregate into these winding, snaking roads until they finally converge at their destination. In essence, the pilgrimage starts when you leave your house. It's the moment you close the door and you walk off. You have everything you need on your back, and you just make your way up. The pilgrimage can be done on foot. You can do it on a bike, and you can do it on horseback. And your destination is the main square in front of the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in the town of Compostela in Spain, northwest of Spain, about 100 kilometers from the coast. And that's where St. James, the Apostle James's remains are said to rest. But the Camino has a much older history. So it's about 2,000 years old that we know of, and there are hints that it's even older, and that afterwards Christianity took on that spiritual journey, and you know, St. James was there to make it happen in a sense. So my first Camino, I've done 2 now, my first Camino was on the French Way, and I started across the Pyrenees Mountains on the French side, and had to climb all over the mountains and then walk on. My journey didn't end at Santiago. I decided to continue all the way to the sea, to Finisterre, World's End. It took another extra 3 days. But my trip from where I started in Saint-Jean-de-Pied-de-Port in France until Santiago took 33 days. So 1 day for every year Christ walked the earth. For me, it was a target I wanted to try and achieve, and I'm grateful to have been able to achieve it. So afterwards, Finisterre took me another 3 days to walk the remaining 100. So in total, I walked about 900 kilometers through this journey. Everything on my back, everything I needed. Two pairs of shorts, 2 pairs of 2 shirts, you know, a rain jacket, a sweater, yeah, and that's pretty much it. With a few extras, some food and whatnot. I often walk about, it would take 8 hours a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. Come rain, sun, snow, I started it in April, so we got a bit of everything. And I would sleep in hostels. So, Marcus, you know this very well. You've been on the Camino as well. So some hostels have tiny rooms where you sleep 4 to a room, and others have the biggest is 1,500 to one big room, one massive hall where everybody sleeps. It's extraordinary. I learned then that real happiness is a hot shower. So when a friend of mine first told me about the Camino, I'm like, so essentially what you're telling me is just a long walk. I'm like, you're insane, I'm never doing this. Honestly, it's so very far from the truth. At its heart, it is a journey of faith. So I've met people who are Muslims, Jews, Hindus walking on the Camino. It's not just Christians. It is at its heart, and I said, a religious journey, centrally, and it remains extremely Christian. But it is a spiritual journey, and it is a journey of faith for everybody who walks the path. And it's telling of how inclusive people feel Christianity has become to have so many different faiths and cultures on the way with you, walking. And to be honest, the Camino did change my life in very, very many ways. In fact, I really feel like my life started when I walked it. And everything before that, honestly feels like it happened to somebody else. It's like I have somebody else's memories there. It feels like it happened to somebody completely different to me. So in a sense, I'm only about 10 years old. This year in April, it'll be a decade since I walked it. And yeah, 10 years old explains a lot, I'd say. So what really makes it so special? I hope you are going to get a sense from what I'm telling you now and from the pictures you're going to be seeing pass there. It's not just that you see the world so very differently when it's passing you by at 4 kilometers an hour. It does allow you to slow down in many senses, many ways, shapes. It eliminates all distractions. You put away your phone. You have nobody calling you incessantly. You don't have constant interruptions, traffic, etc., etc. You have time to sit back walk, but mentally sit back and take everything in. And you can focus on things that are the very most important things to you, but that are not necessarily so very immediately visible or so loud. They're not vying for your attention constantly. It's both in a literal sense, from the tiny flower or a little beetle walking past, and you can actually stop and look at the beauty of the colors as a light, reflects off it. But it's also a metaphorical one or an internal one. You become open to the world, to the small things, to the simple things, to the beautiful things around you that really pass you by when you're in a rush. And you can really then start to listen. You can start to listen to people, the people you meet, who are some of the most extraordinary and most interesting people I've ever met, many of whom are still my friends, many of whom came to my wedding, and one of whom was central to my journey of transformation. And I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. But equally importantly, you get to listen to your heart. You get to start to revisit what you feel is important to you, without any other, without any other interventions, let's say. Every other person in your life, your parents or whomever else, your family interjecting, or the needs of other things interjecting. You have time to reflect on what's important, what you need, and why you want to get there and how you're going to get there. And at the end, also, you end up listening to the Camino itself, to the path. It does speak to you, and I felt it on more than one occasion. Like you could listen to God talking to you, telling you some things. And when I say the Camino changed my life, well, in many ways. The first is, I met my wife because of it. Right? When I had just finished it and returned to Lebanon, I was invited to a party at which my wife was attending. And the only person that we had in common had told her that evening, because he was trying to do a Camino journey himself with a bunch of friends, he told her that evening that, that project was off. And she was interested in still learning more about the Camino. He's like, wait, I think a guy just came back, why don't you go and talk to him? That's how our story started. Since then, we have walked the Camino together. When our first son was born, and we walked the last 120 kilometers. We reached Santiago and baptized our firstborn in the cathedral. So another way the church changed my life is, the Camino changed my life is, I came back to the church in a sense because of it, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. And the third way is, I learned how to listen. Not to people because people have always been central to what I thought was important in my life, but to listen to the path, to listen to life around me, and pay attention to things that I might not otherwise have. So take a quick step back on how I actually got to walking on the Camino. So in January of 2020, one morning, about 3rd or 4th of Jan, I don't remember the date exactly, I woke up one day and I couldn't get up out of bed. I stayed in bed for about 3 weeks. I just burnt out. I collapsed completely. I was a lawyer back then as well. I was working with my father in a practice that he built from the ground up in Abu Dhabi. And just work pressure got to me. And at the time, I was also studying for, I think, my 4th degree at the time in Lebanon. So traveling back and forth, and I had just had exams to do, and I was just exhausted. And to top it off, my girlfriend at the time broke up with me at about the same time as the exams came on. So I was back, and it's one problem after another, one disaster after another. Something snapped when I came back at the beginning of the year, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And then one day I realized, after 3 weeks, I realized I was packing a bag to basically travel the world until my money ran out and then just disappear, fall off the face of the planet. And I realized then that that was so very selfish of me. I could not imagine I could actually think that, let alone even just kind of pull out my bag and start doing this. So I figured something needed to happen. I couldn't do this to my parents. It's just, you know. So eventually, I ended up in Paris, where I stayed with my uncle, where the idea was, you know, spend some time with your little cousins. There were 6 or so at the time, and you know, maybe the love of little children can kind of give me a break and, you know, give me a jump start. I ended up going to see a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with burnout. So it's a form of depression, but you know, extreme exhaustion and so on. So she said I needed a break and I couldn't work for 6 months. I'm like, you're nuts? 6 months no work? It's like antithetical to everything in both my parents' families. It's not part of our values. You can't just sit back and not do anything. She's like, no, you need to take the time out, otherwise you're gonna collapse again. And when I told her that, you know, life just felt great, nothing, even food didn't have any taste left. And you know, my conversations with people that I used to enjoy, nothing had any meaning. She suggested that I persevere anyway, and that I needed to just go out there and start doing the things that I used to enjoy, and slowly, over time, things would come back. So I ended up visiting a friend of mine in Brussels. I figured, why not? I love to travel, I like to spend time with friends, took my camera, I used to like photography, let's go. I went off there, got to the train station, walked out to the train station in Brussels, because you know Brussels very well, right? So if you walk out of the train station, if you continue up, and I think to the right, there's a small garden, like an open park, with a hill, and there's a menhir at the top of the hill. I was always a history buff, Celtic culture. Menhir, what's a menhir doing here? I went to examine. Turns out it was a gift from the Junta of Galicia, so the government of Galicia, to the city of Brussels, and they erected it at the starting point of the Camino from Brussels. I thought that was interesting. Took a picture, sent it to Nadine, the friend who introduced me to the idea of the Camino. Thought he might like that. Returned to Paris a few days later, and I decided, yeah, you know what, let's just do a road trip through Paris. I'll go visit vineyards and eat and, you know, enjoy French food. Rent a car and go around. So I went to a bookshop, the first English-speaking bookshop, English-language bookshop on the continent. It's next to the Louvre Museum. So as I'm going there, there's a park not far from the Louvre that has a tall Gothic tower in the middle of it. I always passed by and I was always curious, what was that? And I asked this time around. And they said, well, you know, they erected it at the starting point for the Camino from the city of Paris. I'm like, okay, that's odd. Just right after everything else. Get into the bookshop, go to the travel section, and the only book that calls to me, I didn't even see what it was until I pulled it out and I looked at it. I'm like, Guide to the Camino de Santiago. I'm like, okay, I get it. So 12 days later, I bought everything I needed, and I was on my way. So I met so very many wonderful people there on this journey. And in the first 3 days, I got every answer I needed to carrying on. So it stopped being about me. The rest of the journey was not about me. The rest of it was about everybody else I met on the way. And their stories and what brought them to the Camino. And I learned so much there. And that's how I ended up meeting Father John, who's a Benedictine monk, who was walking the Camino himself, and we ended up walking together for about a week. He's the gentleman who's responsible for bringing me back to the church, in a sense. He's, you may have seen this picture already, he's a very kindly, not very old man, he's about 50 at the time, beard, glasses, smiling with a yellow shirt. You may see him pop by. He's also in a picture drinking a glass of water with a sweltering sunscape behind him. I thought that was fitting for the time where we were. So Father John showed me the beauty that I had missed by focusing on, let's say, what to me at least seemed like less than stellar history. Or the constant sermons from priests in churches I would attend in Lebanon that was mostly just about fire and brimstone. It's about, that negative side, the stuff that we shouldn't be doing. Instead of focusing on the positive, I didn't really get a sense from the churches I attended in Lebanon, from the culture there, that there was the Christian values that I thought were central. Something seemed to be missing to me. And it was, well, perhaps the trouble with being a lawyer is you overanalyze everything. You study everything and you nitpick. And I was never somebody who could just believe without understanding. So everything kind of put together, it just put me off and it gave me a lot of pause. So for a long time I was uncertain. But from my conversations with Father John, I learned a lot. I came to understand a couple of central things. For one, the church, well, it was built by men, by people. We're all fallible. So nobody's perfect. And on occasion, people they forget what the mission is, and they end up focusing on power and on wealth and on control. That's, even the Bible, it was written by men, interpreting the Word of God. Is their interpretation in some instances correct, or others? We all have our views on that. So I had trouble reconciling all of those things. And he ended up he basically focused my attention on the central thing. You have to separate religion from the institution and judge the religion by its core values, by the best of it, and not by, let's say, the fallibility of men. So ultimately, that to me meant carving out everything all those parts that I couldn't reconcile with the bits that did jive with what I felt inside, in my heart, in my chest. I focused on the message of service, of humility, of compassion, and the strength in the face of adversity. I mean, it's not, it's not the weak or the meek who can turn the other cheek. It has to be someone with strength of character, internal, and someone who often will not get it only by his own hands, but from something bigger than them. And for me, the message is also about putting people first, before the principles, always. And I guess for me, what it means is it can be summarized in Matthew 25, the verse that talks about where the king comes and talks to the people and tells them, well, those of you who have fed me, clothed me, given me shelter when I needed it, and allowed me, the stranger, to enter your home, and took care of me, well, you are worthy. And people respond, well, we don't know you. How do we feed you? How did we feed you? When did we feed you? When did we clothe you? He says, well, whoever has done this to your brothers and people around you, you have done it to me. And that, for me, was the central message, and always is. And that was central to the Camino. It's what, like I said, in the first 3 days, I got everything I needed, and everything else afterwards was the needs of others. And it's why I became a lawyer in the first place. I wanted to try to add value to people's lives. And I'm tremendously blessed to have been given the opportunities I've had, and to have been able to do and work on the things I've been able to work on. And even though the path that I took at the beginning brought me eventually back to where I started in Abu Dhabi, it's not the same as not having left at all. Things are different, I'm different, and I look at things differently. And it's the ability to be able to take a step back every now and then, focus inwards or upwards, and just listen and sit back and recenter myself every now and then, whether going to a place that always feels like home, St. Joseph's. I grew up there. It's an extraordinary place. So, whether it's there or at home, or with my family, or just, every 5 minutes or whenever it takes me, stop what I'm doing at work and just make a small prayer. And I don't know if I've actually been able to live up to the standards I've set for myself, or that I believe we need to be living up to, where we are yet. Okay. Life has a habit of getting in the way, but I do know I'm going to try and continue to strive for this. Not just for me, but for my family, not just because I want them to be proud, I do obviously, but because they make me want to be better, always. And yeah, that's essentially my story. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here. If anybody has any questions while the slides continue. It's the second time. Oh wow, all right. Thanks. Yeah. I guess no questions. Marcus? Actually, Marcus has done the Camino twice now as well, right? And so Marcus and Marcus is one of my best friends. I've known him for what now, 10, 15 years? 15 years. So he's also a lawyer. Don't hold it against us. Thank you very much for everything.